Welcome to The Read Down, your weekly progressive political hot take by the Stonewall Democratic Club. On today's episode, we'll be reading down the effects of what happens when you screw over your smartest family member, the crumbling attempts by the Trump campaign to woo voters with a law and order message, and opening the library to read the GOP for filth, and giving you the rundown on the latest 2020 developments. I am Jonathan Welch. I'm your host this week, and I'm joined on the panel by my co-hosts Ryan Basham and Alex Mohajer. And today our special guest panelist is, you may have seen her, she is a drag queen who covered the impeachment hearings and blew up all over the internet when that happened, Pissi Myles.
Well, yeah. Come on, Pissy. I've often been called Pissy.
Same.
I called you that earlier.
You'd be surprised how few people actually call me Pissy. In a dark nightclub with the music thumping, people are like, "What's your name?" I'm like, Pissy. They're like, Chrissy? I'm like, it's Pissy. They're like, Missy? I'm like, it was a total like Bob the drag queen moment. I almost was like, it's Bob. My name is Bob.
Wow. You should have just gone to the where they would just call you Pissy for shit.
I will say that Pissi is an energy that we welcome here on the Read Down, so we're very thrilled to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to get started before we get into our regular segments. Late last week, we had the news that Congressman John Lewis of Georgia died at the age of 80 after battling pancreatic cancer. Lewis was a civil rights hero and just a legend, and known as the conscience of Congress for his 30 plus years that he served in the House of Representatives. The same day that Lewis passed away, C.T. Vivian, who is another civil rights legend who worked alongside Martin Luther King, as did Lewis, also passed away at the age of 95. So I want to just reflect on these two extraordinary men, extraordinary Democratic men who we lost, who represent something that, of course, we're seeing so much of right now with the Black Lives Matter movement really kind of hitting a high note at this moment. It's interesting that, of course, we're celebrating their lives with all that's going on. So I wanted to just kind of get our thoughts on that. And let's start with Pissi. Let's go. Let me put you on the spot.
I think it's a very difficult thing to nail down, because on one hand, it's like you said, we are in the middle of this huge moment for people of color in this country, and so to lose a voice like John Lewis and CT is so it feels painful because they were so important, but I think in a way, the if you can see the silver lining of it, the beauty is that you're reminded of the message that they've been preaching for so long, and that is to, as John Lewis put it, get in the right kind of trouble, the necessary trouble. And if there's going to be a legacy from him, I hope that, and I think he would hope that was it. And so in a moment where I think we need his voice, that was the best. Not the best. That was the only way he could get that message out at the moment.
For sure. I think that we're losing so many people who represent values that we have to kind of carry on. So, Alex, Ryan, do you guys have thoughts that you want to add in there?
I think, look, all of us will be dead and gone when the communities we represent and that we fight for will live in a world where discrimination isn't a part of the pretext of our daily lives. I said to my friend the other day, just by existing, just by living well, anyone who belongs to a marginalized group is making the world a better place for everybody who comes after us. But then there are people like John Lewis, who he didn't just exist. He didn't just live well, although he did end his life, I think, living quite well. He showed us what excellence in making a difference is. And I know that I'm going to miss hearing what he has to say about what's happening right now, going forward, whatever the future right nows are. But I just feel really honored to have gotten to live for my lifetime to overlap with his. And I hope that him passing right now means that it's like a little bit of kerosene on the fire that he helped start. Because right now is such an important time for the causes that he literally was willing to put his life on the line for. And if we can make his loss mean that much more in this moment, it's worth it. So I think any of us who are in touch with our legislators or not, now is the time to reach out to them and say, hey, the Voting Rights Act that could have his name on it needs to get passed. Let's make it happen now in his memory. Let's make it a real thing now in his memory. So
that could certainly happen. I think that was HR 4, which was something that he had a very heavy hand in writing and getting passed by the House prior to his death. And of course, that sits on Mitch McConnell's desk with no direction.
Like 1,000 other things.
Just like anything else. So we certainly don't want the legacy of John Lewis to sit on Mitch McConnell's desk. We have to...
certainly not. Certainly not. And not with any of the Republicans, including, I think it was Marco Rubio who posted a picture, and it wasn't even with
Cummings.
John Lewis.
It was Elijah Cummings.
And it was
who
so
also, to be fair,
cringeworthy.
tragic loss.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. But it's like, not all black people look the same, Marco. And B, if you're really that connected to this man and have experienced such a profound experience with him, you would at least know what picture it is you're looking at. It was really cringeworthy. And at the end of the day, John Lewis is a civil right. He's a lion of the civil rights movement. And I'm very saddened and moved by his passing. I think it's a major loss. Why am I like this? And I just want to point out that
you like it.
I'm sorry. I just want to point out he was one of the big 6 leaders of groups who organized the 1963 March on Washington. He fulfilled many key roles in the civil rights movement and its action. He helped end legalized racial segregation in the United States, and he led the Selma to Montgomery marches across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Just some of the noteworthy things. He won a 1975 John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award. He's just a hero, and he will be missed. And I hope we can honor his passing by honoring his legacy and what he stood for, especially coming up.
I just want to... go ahead.
Nope, that's fine.
I'm just going to say, if you're watching this or you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, shit, how could I ever make a difference compared to John Lewis? Your job isn't to be just like John Lewis. You can move the ball forward and make a difference like John Lewis did in small ways. So you don't have to dedicate your life the way that John Lewis did, but you can honor his memory by doing your bit.
Yeah, a lot of, John Lewis was extraordinary. And a lot of the people who have that kind of profile are extraordinary people. From what I've heard from so many people these days who are talking about John Lewis is that he was the kindest member of Congress, and kindness is something that you don't typically see in the halls of government, right? But on top of that, he showed forgiveness, he showed grace,
yes.
He showed compassion. He was there, he showed up for everybody. And if we can just kind of carry on with some form of kindness in his memory, and also push the people out who dishonor his memory and dishonor the things that he worked for. That's what
As his good friend Hillary Clinton said, all we need is a little more love and kindness.
Yes,
Hillary. Actual friend Marco Rubio.
And I think it's really important to remember too that he really was about forgiving even the most egregious offenders. So we can push out the people who fight against what he fought for, but we can still forgive them, and that's what he would want us to do.
I will gladly forgive Governor Brian Kemp when he is unemployed and destitute. So let's make that happen.
Oh, poor Brian.
Poor Brian.
$600 a week, not cutting it, Brian.
Talk about mediocre white men not questioning their worth. You know what I mean?
Well, let's keep things on the theme of Georgia before we break into the Designing Women theme song. I want to talk about some big Democratic energy, some BDE for the week. The first thing, of course, does pertain to John Lewis, because with John Lewis's passing, his seat, he won the primary for his seat for November, so the Georgia Democratic Party had to select someone to take his place, and they selected a phenomenal candidate, Georgia State Senator Nikema Williams, who was recently arrested when she was at the Georgia State Capitol for protesting how horribly they handled the 2018 election. So she is an example of good trouble. She's a good troublemaker, and so I want to talk a little bit about her. Do you guys have any takeaways for that?
I mean, I think, look, I'm 100% excited about her. I think the optics of her also being the state party chair at the same time presiding over the meeting that she got selected for this with, that's a little bit messy, but I'm fine with it because she's totally the right person for it. Although the person who is second, who came in second among like the handful of people that like the committee whittled it down to vote on, would have been the first queer person elected to Congress from Georgia. So, but that person only got 2 votes. So whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, I think she is she's a figure in herself, and sometimes the leader of the group, even though they're presiding over everything, everybody else is it's not a Brian Kemp situation, okay?
No,
it's not like she was rigging the votes, but of course,
yeah, it's above board.
Yeah. But of course, putting more women of color in Congress to represent, districts all across the country. This just further diversifies the Democratic presence in the House of Representatives. And she is, of course, a young woman. She's 42 years old, so there's a long career ahead. So
I love that in politics, 42 is young.
I know. I feel like I'm 12 in comparison to anybody else. That's why I think I get involved in politics, because it keeps, first of all, it makes me look older because I'm, up at night and having stress dreams of paramilitary troops, Mitch McConnell, things like that. So we'll get to that later.
I guess that's the beauty of politics, though, because as a drag queen, 42, you're basically dead. So I should be segueing into politics any moment.
Yes. Are you already?
Manage that campaign, Pissi. I would manage that campaign.
Get down there. You're in New Jersey. Are you still in New Jersey?
I am. I live in New Jersey. I perform mostly in New York.
Yeah. So New Jersey.
So my good friend Jackie Cox.
I do know Jackie Cox.
Jackie and I went to high school together.
Did you really?
Yes.
Did you date?
No. No.
I'm trying to blow up our whole spot right now. I'm gonna be like, what was she like in high school?
We went to our first gay club together when we were 18 years old.
What was it?
But which one?
Tiger Heat in West Hollywood.
Oh, Tiger
It was the
Heat.
only place where you could go at 18.
Oh,
But
And thank God that place is no longer there, right? Because that was kind of...
Isn't it?
Oh,
No,
wait,
it
no.
is. It's just
I
not in
haven't
the
been
same
18
place.
for a long time, Jonathan.
Fair.
Back in my day, it was in West Hollywood. Now
Well-
it's in East Hollywood.
Oh, it's in East Hollywood. Well, listen, before we get into the geographic ups and downs of the Hollywood area, East Hollywood, I want to continue talking about, of course, talking about women in Congress. We had some primaries last week. We had some really strong results coming out of these primaries. It was no surprise that these two winners are going to take on incumbent Republican senators in the November election. We have Sarah Gideon, who is the current Speaker of the House in the state of Maine, a state very close to my heart, where I have a lot of family right near where I grew up. And she's going to take on the ever-concerned Susan Collins, who is trying to run for, I think, her 5th term after she said she'd only run for 2. And then in Texas, in the great state of Texas, John Cornyn, who my friend who lives in Texas calls the biggest asshole in the Senate, is going to be challenged by combat veteran MJ Hagar, who, if she is elected, would be the second woman wounded in combat next to Tammy Duckworth to serve in the United States Senate. So I just have nothing but amazing things to say about these two women. I could sing their praises all night and into tomorrow.
Don't we officially have Amy McGrath as well?
She is also a combat veteran. She wasn't wounded.
Oh no, I was just saying. As
no, yeah, she won though. Yes.
Yep, she won. Yes. So actually, I should say with Amy McGrath, of course, if the two of them are elected, then that gives us 3 women who were combat veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, Donald Trump hates nothing more than a woman and someone who actually served in the military. So it should be very exciting. And I'll note that having more women in politics, in government, is extremely important. Now is the time. And now is the time to have a democratically controlled U.S. Senate. And these are the ladies to do it. I am so proud of Sarah Gideon and MJ Hagar. And Amy McGrath too, even. Yeah, Amy McGrath too.
Sure.
He had misgivings about the way she ran the primary, but I'm if it's gonna be a woman and a veteran to take down a shitbag like Mitch McConnell, then I'm all for it. And we need to get in now, get in early, and support these candidates. They are excellent candidates, and will do the United States proud in the U.S. Senate and actually bring back some decorum and some prestige to the halls of the U.S. Senate, as opposed to what is currently in place with just terrible. Mitch McConnell is beneath the dignity of the United States Senate, and Donald Trump is beneath the dignity of the White House. And Susan Collins is beneath the dignity of Maine.
Porta potty.
Yeah.
I have to say,
when people a lot of credit.
When people make fun of him by saying he looks like a turtle, I think that's just in really poor taste, because I have so much respect for turtles. Yeah, turtles are like so much more valuable to our society than Mitch McConnell. Also, as somebody who grew up
with legislation at a much quicker pace, so
it's true.
Yeah. It's true.
He
really are.
Like Franklin the Turtle if he was in the Upside Down. Doesn't he? Like he's the evil, awful, disgusting demagogue version of Franklin the Turtle.
Like he's whatever slides out of the shell, really, and then
yeah. And that slide is like a really wet, greasy.
Ew! Don't use the word wet and greasy to describe Mitch McConnell. Ugh.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But as somebody who grew up across the state border from Kentucky in Tennessee, Kentucky is near the bottom of the list in education, household incomes, numbers of residents covered by health insurance. And Mitch McConnell's been in Congress, since Jesus was a baby. He runs the Senate.
Amy McGrath was a child.
Since Amy McGrath was a child, imagine all the missed opportunities that he's had to make Kentucky proud and make Kentucky a better place to live and missed. Imagine what a woman, a combat veteran, could do in that position.
That's the thing I find frustrating about Mitch, though, is that he keeps getting reelected and reelected and reelected. And I understand that Kentucky is a very conservative state, but even as far as conservatism goes, I don't think he's done anything that terribly noteworthy.
Well, not for us, but he has for Republicans.
But he's done a lot for Republicans in terms of blocking things. But I can't think of something that Mitch McConnell did that was a standout action.
It's not stand out to us, but Neil Gorsuch. Neil Gorsuch.
So there's of course the judiciary, but I think this brings up a bigger question.
It's pretty big. It is. That obstructive act is one of the most vile in American history, and will define the United States Supreme Court for a generation. So in terms of what he's done for us, it's absolutely nothing. But in terms of what he's done for the conservative Republican agenda and for corporate interests and for all the other interests that are protected by having Justice Gorsuch illegitimately on the bench,
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not like he's right.
have that Supreme Court, and it turns them out to vote too. I'll note.
Yeah.
So,
but Kentucky doesn't know what it's like to have a senator who brings home the bacon for the state, though. It's not like they're like, oh, you know what? We send so-and-so to the Senate, and we're going to have like 5 new extensions of the interstate system. We're going to have, massive amounts of new industry brought in. It's not like state-specific stuff has gone really well for Kentucky because Mitch McConnell has been there, unless the entire state of Kentucky just wants to ban abortion, make sure the coal and natural gas industries can use and abuse their employees without retribution. Make sure that firearms are untraceable. If that counts as bringing home the bacon for the residents of Kentucky, then well done. But it's not like there's been this major infrastructure project in Kentucky because Mitch McConnell brought home the bacon. So I agree with that.
But that brings up, like what Pissi was saying, what has he actually done? What have they actually done? I think it brings up a bigger question of what do conservatives actually stand for? They do stand for, yes, they do stand for the judiciary and for, blocking things that way, but they can't do the work themselves. They can't do the work of actually legislating. They do the work of blocking, they do the work of campaigning, and they do the work of propaganda. They do nothing else that actually speaks to how you can affect people's lives, but they set up systems so that long after they're dead, when they can become the Confederate statues that they hope to protect, they believe that all of these systems are going to be in place. And what does Kentucky have? Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell, they are certainly not creating infrastructure.
And you know what I'll say also, Jonathan, very excellent point. And what I'll say is, if Mitch McConnell's main accomplishment in the U.S. Senate as the Senate Majority Leader is to obstruct, I'll note his big splashy message during Obama's administration was our number one priority is to make this a one-term president, and he failed at that. What he did end up doing is he held his breath on the floor with his hands folded with the rest of his coalition, with the rest of his caucus, and obstructed every piece of legislation that the Democrats, when they controlled the government in 2007, tried to pass. And then when nothing moves and nothing gets done, they blame the Democrats for their fecklessness and their inability to legislate, when really it was their obstruction. And voters, for some reason, buy it every time. And it frustrates me to no end. I have been waiting for the downfall of this modern Republican Party, which is now no longer even, it's a joke now with Trump as the standard bearer. But the only way that this party is going to change is if we vote them out and vote them into obscurity and create such a massive control of government by the opposing party that they are forced to reevaluate and restructure their priorities and values.
Well, I just want to proffer an alternative way to handle this. Is just send some. Okay, so can just send some like decked out in camo, unmarked vehicles, no badges, military style junta policey people, just to snatch them, just to body snatch them, put them in a minivan they rented from the Enterprise and disappear them. I just think that's a valid option.
I don't even know where to go with that, but what I will say is when we talk about Mitch McConnell and how absolutely terrible he is, he's only passing that down to others. So I think the only way that we really actually we need an opposition party that's healthy. We need to have a second party. Like, we can be the big tent for a while, and we can do that for years. Hopefully we do, and hopefully we are successful at it, but hopefully we do it in a way that forces the hand of the GOP so that they actually know that they have to reform, like they have to do something, either split off and the Mitt Romneys of the world can create another conservative party and eventually just like suffocate the existing GOP, or they have to fix themselves from within. So it's going to be a very interesting thing. But with Mitch McConnell, his number 2, of course, his whip is John Cornyn. So how interesting would it be if on election night we lose the number 1 and number 2 of the Republican Senate leadership are gone? I think that would be fantastic. Fantastic. Fired.
I still wonder what will happen with Ted Cruz, but I guess we'll just go from there.
We got a few years to go.
Yeah.
Who has the most punchable face in the United States Senate.
But the good news, though, is that Ted Cruz's next election will be during a presidential election year. So he'll be easier to beat. So let's just,
We have to wait 7 goddamn years for that, or 6 years for that. So
we have way too long.
Four. They get 6-year terms. Okay, sorry. Yes,
it is going to feel like 7 years. Okay,
Yeah.
it's going to feel that way.
I mean,
It's
God willing, with the election coming, we'll be able to flip it enough so that Ted Cruz just becomes relatively obsolete. I don't know if I depend on that. I don't know if I depend on the huge blue wave that we're all hoping for, but like I said, I do hope for it.
Yeah,
we have to. You and me both, Pissi. And you know what? Also, Ted Cruz, he campaigned so hard against Donald Trump, and Donald Trump ridiculed him, his family, his wife, his children on the debate stage. And Ted Cruz is such a pathetic, spineless person, and so does not have any of the conviction. He does not stand by any. He stands for nothing. That their pictures of him phone banking for Trump like a month later were some of the most nauseating I have ever seen. Ted Cruz, you are a worthless, spineless loser. And I cannot wait till 4 years comes and you're out. But let's focus on John Cornyn for now.
And didn't his dad try to assassinate JFK?
Okay. We're not. Listen. All right. You know what? I think it's time to wrap the segment up. But before we do, we have elections. Obviously, we did just talk about these elections that are super important, and we encourage you to get involved if you already don't have races that you're focusing on. The Senate is a really important place to get involved. So pick a race or two and you can focus on that, donate some money and some of your time. But here in Los Angeles, we do have a very important election as well coming up because Stonewall has endorsed the challenger to sitting District Attorney Jackie Lacey, especially with a lot of talk about defunding the police and the actions of the DA as it pertains to the police here in Los Angeles. We are very excited to have George Gascon, who is running against her, on our side, and we are fighting for him. And Alex, I think you want to talk about an interview that's going to air on our Stonewall Spotlight podcast.
Yes, our flagship podcast, the Stonewall Spotlight, was fortunate enough to do an interview with George Gascon. This interview is going to be out on Monday, and if you want to catch it, it's a really impressive interview. Our very own Mackenzie Hussman interviewed him, and they talked for about 30 minutes about Jackie Lacey. He told us what he thinks of her. He told us what he's going to do when he gets into office, and he had a lot of things to say about Black Lives Matter. It was a very, very riveting interview, actually. And so we want to play a little bit of that for you guys now, and we hope that you will tune in and listen to the interview when it goes live on Monday.
All right.
Mr. Gascon, you have called Jackie Lacey a bad cop apologist and criticized her for locking up too many people of color and not making enough use of a program that she started that would keep from locking up those who suffer from a mental illness. According to the California Department of Justice, violent crime and forcible rapes have gone up in LA County under Lacey's watch. Is Lacey entirely to blame for these statistics? And why do you present a better alternative to her?
Yeah, look, I think when it comes to being a bad cop apologist, she is, right? This is her doing. She's had somewhere around 600 killings of police officer killing members of the community during her time in office. And time again, she's looked the other way and often even have quoted an interpretation of the law that actually gives the police officers a broader capacity to use deadly force that actually under the law, which is a lot to say given how broad the law already is and how much tolerance it has for police use of violence. And the fact that she does that, I think is horrendous. I think is immoral, and she's not doing her job there.
I have heard George Gascon on many interviews. He is just phenomenal. He's the progressive voice that I think we really need in Los Angeles. And of course, given kind of the current temperature of things in Los Angeles, I think he's really the right person to kind of turn us around.
Right. And what he goes on to say in the interview is that some of her actions, Jackie Lacey's actions, have been immoral, that there's a stark contrast between them, and that he calls her desperate. And I thought that He was very forceful and very authentic. So everyone tune in to Stonewall Spotlight Monday on Apple Podcasts and everywhere you can find podcasts, and give it a listen. It's a very interesting interview.
Please do. Speaking of interviews, let's get into some of the main topics of the week because, guys, listen, I am reading on my Kindle because I don't want a physical copy of this man's face anywhere in my house. I am reading Mary Trump's book, Too Much and Never Enough. And this week, or within the past week, Mary Trump was on the Rachel Maddow show, which we are in direct competition with. We're blowing her away. But Rachel got, and we love Rachel, she got her best ratings ever in the history of the Rachel Maddow show, and also the best ratings ever for MSNBC with her hour-long Mary Trump interview. And if you haven't caught that, maybe you've seen Mary's other subsequent interviews on Chris Cuomo and with George Stephanopoulos on ABC News. I have watched all three. And even though her book is a lot and I have to put it down and just like take a break from it, it is very telling. She is a clinical psychologist. And so her perspective as being someone who was a member of the Trump family, who is nothing like any of the other members of the Trump family, with her educational background and what she has practiced for, I think, the past 20 plus years, is just, it's such an interesting perspective, and it kind of reinforces a lot of the things that people have said. But I want to ask you guys, in terms of books that have come out that are tell-alls about this administration, this one is very different. Will this make a difference? I know Mary thought that in 2016 she didn't say anything because she didn't think it could. I think things look a little different now, so I want to know what the panel thinks.
You know, here's the thing. Like, it sold almost 1 million copies in the first day. In the first day. And only like 30 million Americans vote in a presidential election or something like that. It's not, so assuming that the people who bought the book are also voters. I mean, it doesn't represent an unsubstantial part of the electorate. And I think at this point, it's different because the timing does matter in that it validates so much of what we just feel in our gut to be true about Donald specifically, but the Trumps in general. But more importantly, she is such a credible speaker that if you're if you're in that 10% or 20% in the middle, if you're in that sliver that's movable and you watch her talk about this book, it's pretty obvious. You know, it's easy to write off Omarosa as trying to make a buck off of her affiliation with Donald. It's easy to write off John Bolton as an ideological, sycophant, and all these people who come up with all these books can be written off. But with her, a PhD psychologist who is successful in her own right and highly credible and has been there with him in his life for decades, I think this might actually move the needle in a way that those other books wouldn't.
Sure. Pissi, what are you thinking?
Again, I would love it if it did, but knowing what we know about Trump's base, I think that we're not talking about people who are looking at this objectively. And I don't mean to say that about every Trump supporter, because I know a lot of people who were Trump supporters who over the last 4 years have kind of shied away from him. But I think his strong core base, I don't think that this is going to have, an effect on that. I wouldn't be surprised if with those people, Mary Trump kind of went the same way as Christine Blasey Ford, in that they're going to just call her, they're going to discredit her, and they're going to come up with all of the stories that they can to say, oh, Mary was never, I've already seen them. I've seen people saying, Mary was never very close with her uncle. She was never very involved with the family. She was this, she was that. And I think that,
and he's saying it too. He's saying it in tweets, but he'll tweet anything, right?
Exactly. And I think that's the narrative we're going to see from his most rabid base,
which I'm fine with, because, his hardcore base is like 30-something%. There are still 30-something% of Americans who think Nixon did nothing wrong. So it's, you know what I mean? So it's not like we're worrying about, these are not people that we need to move. I'm not, like, I have a friend, I don't want to give away too many details so then everyone in my life will know who I'm talking about. I have a friend who voted for Trump in 2016 who he's like, I just wanted to fuck shit up. I just wanted to break shit, but I'm not going to do it again. And it's stuff like this that makes it easy for him to say, that was a bad choice on my part. I'm not going to do that again this time.
Yeah, but aren't they getting what they want? Like, I mean, it's broken.
Yeah, okay. You know what? Shame on you, people.
Yeah.
The people that were like, I just wanted to throw a wrench into the system. Shame on you. You knew exactly what you were getting. He did not have any illusions as to what you were going to get. He told us what we were going to get, and he delivered. And what he has done is not a surprise. His obstruction, his corruption, his belligerence, his ineptitude, they were all baked in. And for the people that thought, well, it won't be that bad, shame on you. And, it's not good enough. There's a lot of damage that has to be undone. And I resent that a great deal, especially when the alternative was one of the most superb nominees for president that we ever.
I just remember that there was someone who I knew who said, well, just let the guy do the job. And I remember saying, he cannot do the job. This was in 2016 when he got elected, or early when he was inaugurated. And I was like, he is just utterly incapable of doing that. That's what Mary is talking about in her book. He has absolutely no capability to do the job.
He still hasn't done the job.
Yeah.
He still hasn't done it. But again, I just think that we need to remember that there are, these people who wanted to throw a wrench in the system. I'm not, you know how I feel about shaming people. However, yes, shame on them, because they shouldn't have waited until 2016 to throw a wrench in the works by electing, an asshat. What they should have been doing is getting involved in local elections and paying attention to down ballot races up until that point. They should have been calling their legislators. They should have been writing to their congressmen and their senators when they wanted stuff to change. They wouldn't do all that shit. So they're like, fuck it. I'm just going to vote for Donald Trump. Let this be your lesson. You don't throw a wrench in the machine. You get to work on the democracy, doing your little bit to tinker on the machine of the democracy that you want to be better over time. That's called being a citizen in democracy. If you don't want that, then go to Russia. But that's what we have.
I have been saying this for so long. If you are displeased with the systems that are in existence, the answer is not to blow them up or to jump ship. The answer is to get involved and reform the systems that you would like to see change in from within, whether it is your local Democratic club, whether it is the United States Congress, whether it is the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or whatever it is. And we saw this, and I say this a lot, and I'll try to drive it home. If you're not happy with it, change it. Get involved and change it. And it is possible. We see it happen right here at the Stonewall Democratic Club. When we have people from within who would like it to be run differently, who want us to be focused on different things, you get in and you work on it from within. And change is not something that happens overnight, not in a democracy. Change, we're going to need some radical, quick, bold, fast movement by the next president to undo some of the damage and to mitigate. But real, meaningful, long-term change is something that happens through the hard work. And blowing things up is not the solution. Get involved.
Also, getting involved and getting involved can be fun. Like, a lot of us got involved. At first, we were angry, and sometimes we, take that out on each other. But at the end of the day, we become friends. We become sister and brother soldiers in the fight to make democracy better. And it isn't always adversarial. It isn't always, most of the time, it's actually either fun or boring. So, those aren't awful situations to be in. Get involved. It's not going to bite unless you're into that. But that's something you do after the meeting is over.
It can be super fun. And go ahead.
Sorry, we have a comment from Stephen Martin. He says, y'all are babes.
We agree. Thank you, Stephen.
John Erickson would like to chime in and say, yes.
John.
So thanks, John Erickson. If you're watching and you're enjoying the broadcast, leave a comment. Let us know what you think and chime into the conversation.
I want to say, too, that with Pissi, if sometimes you just feel like you need to get into your best drag and show up at the Senate, and
let's not say our best. Let's say next to best.
I was surprised you didn't go with like a Diane Sawyer kind of like.
A lot of people said that to me, but what's funny is it was not in its initiation, my idea to go. I was approached by HAPS, and they said to me, they're like, we think you're very funny, and we want an entertainment correspondent to go down to the hearings and to make this accessible to young people who would otherwise not be paying attention. And that was something that was very important to me. And so the gentleman, his name is Jack Beery, he's really wonderful, he's the political director for HAPS, came to see my show at Barracuda in New York City, and he had seen me wearing that outfit. And he had said, we would love for you to come down, and we had talked about it, and I had, obviously decided how important it was for me to go and to be a visible presence. And I said to him, I was like, well, do you have like some kind of preferred outfit? And he was like, just wear what you were wearing the night you did the show. And I was like, okay.
And there you go. And I think when I saw you go through the metal detectors, I almost died. So,
me too.
It made an impression, but it also showed that like there are so many different voices, and it showed that on our side we're a hell of a lot more fun. They have Sarah Palin and Kid Rock, and we have you. So,
well, and my hope, and it's kind of my biggest disappointment, is that for the continuing, because obviously that was just the first day of the public impeachment hearings, my hope was that more people would show up and be there and protest, and that more queens would be involved. And I was very sad that no one else did. I wanted other people to jump on the bandwagon and to say, oh, if we keep bringing this visible force forward, this is how we become a part of the conversation when we are very clearly not being included. And I think that's the most important thing about having done it for me, is that I hope that it inspires other people to go and to continue to be a part of that conversation on a kind of grassroots level. You don't have to necessarily even be a part of something as wonderful as Stonewall. It can be just you yourself going out and doing or saying something. And I think that the sad truth is that these days civics are not being properly taught in most schools in America, and people feel disenfranchised, and they don't understand the system. They don't understand how it works, and so they don't participate in it. And so to show people that there are ways to be involved without having to necessarily be the most knowledgeable or the most well-informed, you can just be there. Just show up and listen to the impeachment hearings and pay attention. And that's why it's important for people like me who are entertainers to break down what's happening at the impeachment hearings and give it to people in easy to digest information. So that is why grassroots activism is so important, and that's why it comes back to John Lewis, because that's absolutely what he was all about.
Yeah, and and I think you brought up listening being the key thing. That if we're listening and we're actually taking that time, we're going to make major inroads, and we have to kind of sit back. And I was thinking, when it comes down to talking about the competency of the job, that in our conversations with other people, we have to listen to their concerns, right? But then also kind of talk about candidates in terms of who can actually do the job. Like, can you achieve the job? Can that person do it? Or are they just kind of a barnstorming campaigner, So it comes down to legislation, and our next topic is the current COVID relief proposed legislation. Of course, Democrats in the House have passed their version, and now Republicans are having at it. I know Mitch McConnell, this broke just before we got on the air tonight, that Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans and congressional Republicans were talking about what they wanted to see in the next coronavirus relief package, which is at odds with what the president is proposing, because he, of course, is being very draconian and stark. But now we at least have congressional Republicans who seem to be working with congressional Democrats in order to hammer out something that's going to work. We don't know if it's going to include the additional $600 in unemployment insurance that's happening every week, because, of course, Republicans are saying that is keeping people away from returning to work. Ryan?
Okay, look. So, all right. So, Republicans, okay, this is a direct quote from the LA Times. Republicans are furious that people can receive more on unemployment than they did while working.
Yeah.
And are determined to ensure that they don't set up the same system moving forward. Here's the thing. Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa, says that he has an employer in his state with 250 employees who refuse to go back to work because they get more money from an enhanced unemployment. Part of that may be true. They may actually get paid more from enhanced unemployment than they did at work. But the rest of it is a lie, because you cannot collect unemployment if you are offered work and refuse it. So he's lying. He is lying.
What?
Right. I just want to dispel that.
The
That is not a
Republican
thing.
Party lies to further their agenda?
Specifically, Chuck.
We're not going to get any help from the
Grassley.
Republican Party in this next relief package, and I would be shocked if there is another relief package if it is able to get past the Senate. I don't think that Mitch McConnell is interested. We'll see, but I don't think that this Republican Party is interested. Alternatively, they would love to continue to blow up the deficit that they ran on in 2016 and I just think is so rich, because the plan, people,
Pun intended.
the plan of the Republican Party, people, is to blow up the deficit and then cut your entitlements, your Social Security, your Medicare, your Medicaid. That is the plan. And that's what they're going to come for first. And as soon as Trump is reelected, you can bet that the things that you're going to lose to pay for this exploding deficit that has exploded under Republican rule and always explodes under Republican rule is that your dearly beloved programs that you paid for. Social Security is not a handout. Medicare is not a handout. You have been paying for it. You've been paying for it your whole life. They're going to cut those programs first. And you can bet that the Republican agenda has been to do that for a long, long ass time.
And
so
they're going to...
I'm not sure we're going to get a relief package out of this current Congress. I think if you are interested in relief from coronavirus, you've got a 6-month wait. Please hold.
I just, and they're going to lie to you and say things like, you don't want your kids to have to pay off this deficit, do you? Well, actually, no, I don't. But also, I don't want wealthy people to not be paying any taxes either. So can we just go ahead and tax wealthy people and then raise the minimum wage so that adding, enhanced unemployment isn't a better deal than working in the first place, A? And B, can't we just go ahead and tax some rich people and just wipe out this deficit in a few years? It's not a big fucking deal. It's doable. We don't have to kill the things that make us a first world country in order to get rid of the deficit. But Alex is absolutely right. That's the plan. And every single time you vote for a Republican, even for dog catcher, you're endorsing that strategy.
And I gotta say, you always say dog catcher, and I don't think anybody runs for dog catcher. I don't even think that that's a thing anymore.
And
listen,
if zero taxes in the last tax cycle, Amazon, corporations. Why are the rich getting away with paying nothing while the rest of us bear the burden of all of these ridiculous Republican fiscal policies that drive up the deficit, that hurt the economy, that do not create jobs? We have 50 million people unemployed, for Christ's sake. Vote these corrupt people out. We need them gone and we need sanity back. And I'll note that Democratic presidents have overseen shrinking the deficit and creating surpluses every single time a Democrat has been president over the last 30 years and longer. So
just saying, Democrats are actually fiscally responsible.
That's very true, right? But also, like, if you want to get rid of the deficit, you have to have an economy that works for everybody. You have to incentivize people to participate in the economy as much as humanly possible, and they can't do that when they're burdened the way that they are at this point, when they don't have any protection. When you're only protecting a small portion, you're not going to have a very healthy economy.
Yeah, I don't want to hear one more Republican say that we have to send people back to work regardless of how unsafe it is right now because we have a risk of more deaths from suicide from people at home because they're not out on the road. Listen, if you want people to stop killing themselves, create an economy where they can make a living wage so they don't have to choose between food and rent. Yeah. Create an economy where they don't have to choose between paying their credit card bill or buying their kid a new school uniform. That's how you keep people from fucking committing suicide over the economy. It's not sending people out into a place where they know they could get sick and die or get someone that they love killed because you haven't managed to protect them from a virus. That's not how that works. So I don't want to hear anybody else talk about, oh, we can't have people not working because of suicide. That's fuck all y'all.
And that's the trouble with trickle-down economics. They've convinced everyone that this is the American dream, that this is capitalism, but unfettered capitalism is basically thievery. It's no better than unfettered socialism or communism. It's any economic structure when exploited is going to yield the worst results, and capitalism has been unfettered for at least the last 4 years, and under many previous Republican presidents and administrations, we've seen it over and over again. It takes a dive, and like Alex was saying, it takes a dive, and then the Democrats bring it back up, but then the Republicans convince everyone that it was the Republicans who started bringing it back up, and then the Democrats brought it back down. And it is my biggest frustration arguing economics with people, because they'll argue these like little minute statistics of like, oh well, the Dow Jones was this during the last 3 weeks, and it's like, well yeah, but you can't look at 3 weeks. You have to look at 3 years and say, well, what did the market do? Where did it go? What was it affected by? And I hate this culture we've kind of grown into where we have boundless information, and it's almost more information than anyone knows how to use. And so they just start making these like wild deductions about it, and you can't convince them that they're wrong.
You can't. Yeah. And also, like, the Dow Jones is not the economy that everybody experiences on a regular basis, you know? So there really is, like, I think economics and civics are things that we have to focus on in education going forward, because people, don't really wrap their heads around it. And we're also societally taught, like, when we're growing up, that talking politics is taboo and maybe we shouldn't do it, you know? So I think we're moving away from that. Exactly. Like, we're moving away from that. And whenever somebody has that conversation with me, when they say, like, I don't want to talk about politics, especially when I go back home, they're like, I don't want to talk politics. What are you talking? And I'm like, listen, politics is life. Politics is, the things that we have to work on and focus on together. It's our morals. It's not anything that's super taboo.
Speaking of which, we've got a comment from John Erickson. He asks, okay, who is the Joy Behar of the Read Down?
Well, Alex asked if he could be. It's definitely Alex.
Yeah, sure. He also says, let's get Civics 101 back into our school.
100%. And also, can we mandate, if we can mandate up to Algebra 2 for every single high school graduate, we can mandate civics, we can mandate economics. Like, look, if you're not already rich...
Oh, I see. I thought you were saying we need to mandate Algebra 2, and I was like, what?
No, we don't need to. No, that's the thing. Listen, my home state of Tennessee mandated Algebra 2 even for special needs students, but they cut Black history from history classes. They make civics and economics optional. And that's ridiculous. Look, if you're not already wealthy, you don't need to worry about the Dow Jones. You need to worry about how much the average American has in their savings account, which is a metric you can track. You need to worry about what the average Americans, what percentage of the average American's income are they spending on their rent, which is a metric you can track. There are things that you can actually track to see how the economy is doing, and it is not the stock market. That only applies to you if you're one of like 48% of Americans who have any stocks at all, and even tinier percentage of those are actually people who have a whole bunch of them. So let's not talk about the stock market. In fact, I think from now on, when the stock market comes up, let's just cancel the conversation. Boop, we're talking about something else.
I think that was Ryan's library read right there.
Yeah.
So we have to open the library, which is formerly the soapbox. We want to talk just for a moment.
But I have something good too.
Well, you're going to have to speed it up.
Time, Ryan. God.
Listen,
And you're the joy.
We were segueing away.
as a true leader would do, I'll set the tone by going first. So my library is open for our mayor, Eric Garcetti. Okay, if I have to see one more tweet where Eric Garcetti is blaming the rise in COVID cases on people not wearing their masks, when all I see in the city and county of Los Angeles, where I live, are people wearing their masks, and not taking any responsibility for reopening way too soon, I'm going to just lose my mind. I think Mayor Garcetti, he's termed out at this point. He doesn't really have much to worry about, but he isn't taking the level of responsibility, and it just seems as though we were doing so well when it came to COVID. We were doing so well with everything closed down, and then implementing testing that was open to the public. Anybody could go. If you had symptoms, if you didn't have symptoms, you could go, you could sign up, you could get the test. It didn't take you very long. Now the testing centers have shrunk, so we only have a few testing centers throughout the county. You can't get a test very easily. If you do sign up for a test, you have to wait in line for hours, and you don't get your results right away. It's like we just all of a sudden turned, and now LA is not doing great, and we need to change course. I am tired of seeing the mayor say that it's because people aren't wearing their masks. Sure, there is a part of that is true. But when you reopen bars, you reopen gyms, you reopen restaurants with no restrictions and no guidelines, you're going to have people get sick. And that's what happened. And we are in a mess right now. So that's what I have to say, okay? And that's just my opinion. It is not the official opinion of the Stonewall Democratic Club, but I want to pass this on to our guest. Pissi, please give us a little moment of what's on your mind.
A moment of anti-Zen. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
My library moment is going to go to Ron DeSantis. Just because he's Ron DeSantis. He has done everything wrong. I'm going to piggyback right on top of yours, Jonathan. Everything that has gone on with reopening Florida has totally shut down the entire system. They opened up so fast. And the thing that frustrates me is that the big Republican talking point has been, well, we're all going to get it. We're all going to get it. We're all going to get it. So we might as well all just get it. And then we have to explain to them that we're trying to flatten the curve. It's like, we know we're all going to get it, or we know that most people are going to get it. But the idea is to flatten the curve so that not as many people get it as quickly, and we can manage it. And they never believed that piece of information. And so now we have cases in Florida where they are setting world records for the number of people, or the number of cases being diagnosed in a day. I think a few days ago it was 25,000 cases in a day. 25 and change. And the thing that's frustrating is living in New York or near New York, in the suburbs of New York, having seen what it did in New York and in New Jersey and in the surrounding areas, how many of my friends were sick, how many people I know have passed away, and what the numbers were that people in the Midwest or farther away didn't believe. Now we're seeing it happen in little pockets all over the country. And it's one thing when the thing that frustrates me the most about the Republican Party is that they can't see farther than, the nose on their face. But that's usually with respect to history. It's not with respect to what's happening right in front of them. And here we have something happening to everyone, and it's happening right in front of all of us, and some people are just not seeing it. And I don't understand that. And now you're going to see, we're already seeing Florida hospitals being inundated, being overcrowded, being unable to accommodate patients. And there was already talk of them being completely run out of ICU rooms. And it frustrates me that instead of saying, how can we tackle this together, we've politicized the issue of COVID-19. It fucking kills me. Excuse my language.
Oh, we have an explicit label, so you are okay. And I think
Beautiful, I didn't know.
and I think he was even labeled Ron Death Santis. So I think that's a new nickname that has followed him. And God, yeah, I mean, what awful a lack of leadership down there. Again, it goes back to, can you even do the job, right? And I don't think he ever could. So I want to now go over to Alex Mohajer for your library read.
I'll make it quick. I know we're running out of time. My library is open this week for the corrupt cabal of people who are running this government, whether it is federal officers in unmarked cars who are disappearing protesters in Portland, Oregon, whether it is Ghislaine, is that her name? Ghislaine Maxwell?
Ghislaine?
Ghislaine is more like it. Who paid $25,000 to a fake news purveyor, Jacob Wohl, to smear Epstein's victims and to get the prosecutor in New York, Jeffrey Berman, fired in an attempt to stall the sex trafficking investigation against her, or whether it is this the suspicious killing of the family of a judge who was set to start a case about Deutsche Bank, the bank that we know that Donald Trump has ties to, and there is involved with the hiding of his tax returns and documents. Enough is enough. We need the rule of law restored to this country and to this government. If it was ever anything that we valued before, it certainly is not now with the people that are running it. This is not a strained swamp. This is the swamp, and we need to vote them all out. We need Bill Barr gone. We need to start this all the way back over. So that's my library for the week.
Thank you, Alex. That was really that was totally on my mind today. All of that, and it was really kind of weighing me down. I'm glad that you articulated it. Ryan, you have a library read.
You know what? I think it's totally fair to count what I just said as a library read. So I'm just going to give a quick shout out to another political pundit who just got a show on MSNBC with a very similar name. Joy Reid began to read out this week. So I like to think of us as her lead-in. So as soon as you're done watching this, turn on MSNBC and check out Joy Reid. She deserves it. She does a great job on this new show, and it's worth checking it out.
She is fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Alex, for pointing out John's comment that this is an hour-long show. Right? So I hate all of you. I'm going to need a hug after this.
We're bleeding into the next hour, okay, guys? Now, listen, this is such a wonderful panel. I want to thank everybody, Alex Mohajer, Ryan Basham, and of course, Pissi Myles. Pissi, can you tell us where we can find you so that we can stalk you online and see you someday in person?
It's in 2027. You can see me live and in person. It's Pissi Myles, PISSIMYLES. You can find me at pissimyles.com. That was amazingly designed by my wonderful husband, David Ione. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Pornhub, wherever you look. I promise I will be there. Surprise!
Alex, log into your account and you can do a little search. Thank you guys so much. This has been a production of the Stonewall Democratic Club. We are the Read Down. We are here every week, Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time. If you want to know more about the Stonewall Democratic Club, you can find us at stonewalldems.org. You can join us for as little as $25 a year and get involved in all of the things that we're doing, including having an influence in this upcoming election. Again, join us next week on Tuesday at 6, and listen to us also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever podcasts are found. Thank you guys. Have a great night.